Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to my humble little tiny home here in Livingston, Montana. Stand by for a second, please. I gotta get some of this anti-crabby juice in me, If I don't get enough coffee in me in the morning, I just want to take somebody's head off. I'm sorry to put it that way, but it's just the way it is with me. Okay, right off the get-go here, I'm still on this subject about people down in the southeast of the United States that are suffering with cold weather, snow, icy roads, and now I hear tell down there in Texas, I do believe it's in Houston, forgive me, but I know, that people are running short of water, drinking water. This whole subject is getting exhausting to me. Has anybody ever heard of melting snow? There is no way in this world that I would die of dehydration because I didn't have water to drink. Because if you got plenty of snow around, all you got to simply do is just melt the snow, and don't tell me you don't know how, and all this other stuff. I'd rather take my chances with an intestinal, a stomach bug or something from melted snow water than say, depleting my system or becoming dehydrated, because that's a dangerous thing too. Just like frostbite, hypothermia, and this other stuff. And there's a 1,001 ways to melt snow. You can get one of these big old jars, the plastic jars with a big, wide mouth, any kind of a jar, preferably probably glass simply because it's safer. But anywhere where you find some clean snow piles, just scoop up the snow and, put the lid on it and try to get a lid that doesn't leak and all that, and throw it up on the dash of your car or pickup or whatever. Eventually, you're gonna, just by stopping here and there and scooping up snow, you're gonna have enough. You're gonna have a good quart of water to drink. It's and there's lots of other ways, but melt snow. But it's a joke here. It's an old joke, I realize. Stay away from brown stained snow and yellow stained snow. But I can guarantee you, if I was thirsty enough, I wouldn't care. I'd drink it all, because what you really want to do if you're gonna melt snow per se, you should probably boil it to make sure that it's safe to drink. But there is no way that you're going to get me to die of dehydration when I've got a bunch of snow around. And yet I've seen on the news, that's what I get for watching news, but at least I'm not watching any politics. But I was seeing that people were, quite worried, and there seemed to be quite a buzz going. Of course, that might be the news media and stuff, flipping out about this fact that people, don't have enough drinking water like down there in Houston and stuff like that. Well, here's my answer. Make your own drinking water. Now, this doesn't have anything to do with anything, but here in Livingston, Montana, I kind of wish you folks in Texas had what we have here. There is absolutely no way that somebody could die of dehydration, because we've got the Yellowstone River running right through the east edge of Livingston. Almost, if Livingston was a little bit further to the east, the Yellowstone River would cut this town right in two, but it doesn't. It follows right along the east edge and then goes on to Billings and like that. And that water down there is not polluted by any stretch of the imagination, but it probably should be boiled simply because it goes through a lot of ranch lands. There's a lot of, cows taking a dump in the river and horses and different things like this, And besides that, the town of Livingston, we get our water supply from the Yellowstone River, believe it or not. We do. Now, I'm not going to get into all that. Okay, I just thought I'd throw that in about the water. It's a real quick solution. Melt snow. There's a bunch of ways that I'm not going to waste time talking about. Well, how much minutes I got here? Okay, 5 minutes. Okay, this is a combination of advising you folks to melt snow and a story. This happened to me in the winter of 1974. I know this all too well. I just first got out of the service December 5th of 1973, and I was having one dickens of a time finding a place to live. I was having one dickens of a time finding work. Most of the people around at that time could give a shit less if I was alive or dead or a Vietnam veteran or nothing. The way I look at it, I never had no homecoming. I didn't. I was really out, kind of, except for my family members and stuff like that. I was really out on my own, truly. So I found myself living, now pay attention here, I found myself living 18 miles out of town, out of Polson, Montana. That's on the south side of Flathead Lake, the south end of Flathead Lake. But I was living out at a place called Buffalo Rapids Bridge. That's what we called it. That's the name of the bridge. And Buffalo Rapids was the name of the area that of the South Fork of the Flathead River below Kerr Dam. Just look all this stuff up on Google Earth and you'll see what I'm talking about. Okay, out there at Buffalo Rapids Bridge, Buffalo Rapids, there was an old sheep herder's cabin. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I may have, on my channel here, I may have told this story before, and if I have, I'm sorry, but I don't care. I really don't, you know. I'd probably put more work into this channel of mine, but I'm not trying to make any money, and I don't do the ad thing and blah, 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 and all this other stuff. But let me tell you about this cabin. It was an old sheepherder's cabin, and it's set up about, I want to say probably about 75 yards from the river, something like that, you know. And all that was around that cabin was a whole bunch of busted down corrals and all that. I don't even know to this day who owned that land, that cabin, but there was a wide open gate there, and I just knew you could come off the county road and turn in there, and you're right at this cabin. And this was a true old log cabin that was probably, you know, it was probably erected, I'm going to say, in the very early 1900s or late 1800s. Got that? Something like that. I mean, this was an old cabin. Okay, here it is. This cabin had no working doors. Not a door on the place. It had no windows in it. No windows whatsoever, except for pieces of glass laying around. The only thing that was in, and there was nothing in that cabin except for a bunch of rocks and, you know, stuff laying around and broken boards and all this other stuff. And when the weather decided to get weird and start snowing and everything, guess what it did? It just blew drips of snow. Excuse me. It blew drips of snow right in the door, right over the windowsills, and made nice little valleys of snow and all that kind of stuff. And the only thing that was working in that cabin, per se, if you want to call it that, working or whatever have you, was the chimney. It had a fireplace and it had a chimney and everything, and I looked up in there and made sure everything was clear and all that. And that is what I used for a source of heat dead in the middle of winter. And it would have been like a January, February, March, right along in there, for sure, of 1974 that I was living out in that cabin, because nobody told me I couldn't, and I just figured if some old redneck come along and run me off, well, that's the way it would be. Now, back in them days, I owned a hopped-up 1957 Chevy, and I mean this thing was hopped up. I worked on it when I was in the service. It was the vehicle I had when I got out of the service. It was the only vehicle I had. It had a 283 in it. I had it blown 60 thousandths over. I had fender well hooker headers on that sucker. I had 302 Feely heads, and I mean this thing, I could jerk the front wheels right up off the ground. You know, I am not kidding you. This, you know, And for a stock streetcar, I could turn the quarter in about 12 seconds, a little more than 12 and a half seconds, something like that. And there was nothing inside this car except for a Mickey Mouse dash that was really made out of plywood and a few gauges. And right in between the bucket seats, those bucket seats were out of a 68 Camaro, by the way, I had a fire extinguisher there. Clipped it, bolted in, because I just knew one day it's something on that 57 Chevy more than likely was going to go up in flames. I mean, when I unbolted this exhaust and was running open headers, I mean, flames had come out of them open headers, those fender well hooker headers, like that far and stuff, and I just had that fire extinguisher in there for safety purposes, okay? In this particular instance, I'm about ready to tell you, I'm damn glad I did. So here I am sleeping in a totally unheated, way out in the middle of nowhere cabin with no windows or doors or anything. But every night I would build a little fire or whatever have you in the fireplace, and I'd lay my sleeping bag down there, kind of close but not too close to burn up my sleeping bag, because I've done that before. I really have. I burned up a couple sleeping bags in my day getting too close to a fire and whatnot have you. That's God's truth. But anyway, this one in particular night, I must have been a little cold, or I got a little bit carried away, but I built up the fire in the fireplace a little bit too big, a little bit too much, because the structure was unsound anyway, I mean, big holes in the walls and, all that stuff, Well, I go to sleep, and all of a sudden I wake up a couple hours later, and the wall that's in back of the fireplace and everything was on fire. To make a long story short, here I am on the lab, sleeping in a cabin that's 40 degrees below zero, snow blowing in there and everything, and I got the fireplace wall on fire. I mean, and the only thing I could think, I'm looking at this going, holy crap, what am I going to do? And then, of course, it dawned on me, that fire extinguisher out there in my 57 Chevy. So, man, I ran out there in my socks and all this other stuff and grabbed up that fire extinguisher and, but I managed to get the fire out. So there I am, no heat, frozen up old cabin, snow drifting in there, and all that stuff, and this white crap, that carbon dioxide, whatever it is that they put in fire extinguishers, all over the place, all over my sleeping bag, all over everything. So I'm pretty sure I took my sleeping bag outside and dusted it off the best I can, and probably rolled it up and threw it in my 57 Chevy. And because what I would do is I'd stay out there for, say, like 3 or 4 days, then I'd run into town for a grocery run, get me a few groceries, stop at the local bar, throw down a few beers, take off, go back out there again, and like that. I'm pretty sure that's what I did. I made sure that fire was put out, and then I probably went to town and got me a few groceries and whatnot have you. But this is a true story. This is exactly what happened to me. I was all by myself out in the middle of nowhere. Well, it's not exactly in the middle of nowhere, but South Fork of the Flathead River. And so I just thought I'd pass this on. I know some of you people down there in Texas right now. And by the way, while I'm jabbering here, it's the 21st of September of 2001, and I know you guys are having really bad weather and water issues and stuff like that, but my message is here is you can overcome it, because I have lots of times. Frostbite, hypothermia, you name it. I beat it all. So keep that in mind. Take care of yourselves, use your head, think out of the box, and we shall see you on down the trail, and adios, my friends. How do I get out of here? Oh, these encoders, man, they're weird.